I tested the Fujifilm X-S20 for a few months, and this APS-C camera may be the best hybrid travel camera for serious enthusiasts. Why? Well, I am so convinced I now own one, and the rest of the reasons I'll tell you in this review. The Fujifilm X-S20 is a mirrorless camera from May 2023 that ranks above the X-T30 and just below the more professional X-T5. The X-S20 is made for hybrid users, and these users, probably you, want a good camera for both photography and video. Is the X-S20 a camera like that? Yes, it is. And I would like to know from you, what do you think is the best hybrid travel camera? Is it this one, or perhaps the Sony a6700? The X-S20 is for sale from $1,299. The backside illuminated APS-C sensor has 26 megapixels, which is usually more than enough for most types of photography.
What does backside illuminated mean?
Basically, it's a more efficient way of how light is processed by the sensor. This results in better low light performances and in better overall image quality. The camera uses the X Processor 5, which makes it possible to record in 6.2K 30fps film in 3:2 ratio, and has f-log and f-log 2, the color profile that extends your dynamic range. You can also take up to 20 photos per second with active autofocus and tracking. And that great autofocus recognizes animals, birds, insects,
motorcycles, bicycles, aircraft, drones, vehicles, trains, and
eyes and heads of people. The X-S20 has in-body image stabilization that stabilizes up to 7 stops. This is me walking without stabilization. This is in-body stabilization. My lamp! This is how it looks with in-body and digital stabilization. Has a vari-angle screen and vlogging mode, and I don't know why, but the camera also has a flash. The 2020 X-S10 also has 26.1 megapixels, but can only film up to UHD 4K 30fps, while the X-S20 can shoot up to 60fps in 4K. The X-S20 uses the X Processor 5 instead of the X Processor 4, and this one can take 10-bit high photos next to the 8 and 40-bit one. The image stabilization has increased from 6 to 7 stops, and on the X-S10 you can only recognize animals and people, while the X-S20 recognizes many more subjects. Finally, the X-S10 is of course a lot cheaper and can also be a good option if you have a smaller budget. Talking about budget, the X-S20 is a competitor of the Sony a6700, with the S20 being almost $400 cheaper. The Sony a6700 may have a 4K 120fps function, but the X-S20 has a faster burst of 30fps and a better video resolution. The S20 can be used for many types of photography and certainly is suitable for capturing sports, birds, and annoying children. Sorry, running children. The maximum shutter speed on this camera is 1/32,000th of a second, which means you can shoot the fastest birds and also can take a photo of them. Note that you get a crop of 1.25 times at 30fps continuous shooting, but 20fps uses the entire sensor. You can also choose 10 and 20fps with the crop if you need a little bit more buffer or want to zoom in a little bit further. Want to take your photo from a distance, but my lens is too short. Oh, gotcha! You have a lot to choose from when it comes to the sensitivity of the sensor, the ISO. With the mechanical and mechanical plus electric shutter, the ISO value can be set from low 80 to 51,200, while with the electric shutter, you can set it from 160 to ISO 12,800. There are 3 automatic ISO modes in photo mode, and these are quite useful. Normally I'm against using auto ISO, but you can choose a minimum and maximum ISO and shutter speed, with the auto ISO 3 having the largest ISO range. Auto ISO 1, for example, has by default a range from 160 to 800, which makes sure you will never take photos with noise. During the ISO test, I noticed the noise becomes more visible at ISO values above 2500 and therefore should be removed in post-production. If you use RAW photos, which I always recommend at higher ISO values, you will keep more information. If you have AI noise reduction available, you can even get cleaner pictures. Autofocus is nothing short of amazing, amazing on the X-S20, at least in most cases. The subject recognition works exceptionally well, and people and birds in particular are quickly picked up and tracked. When taking photographs of birds, it's fast to recognize the shape and eyes of the birds, but when they're in full flight, it won't always track very well. The X-S20 has also more difficulties tracking birds closer to the camera than the ones that are further away. So I guess for that kind of tracking you would need this like Nikon Z9 sports camera. Yes, I'm showing off what I have. It's not even my camera. I found it outside. I do think it's a pity that there is no automatic subject recognition. On the S20 you must set the topic recognition specifically to a subject. This doesn't really benefit your workflow if you take photos or film in an environment with many different subjects, such as in a city. So I hope Fujifilm will add automatic detection in maybe a firmware update. I noticed the camera autofocus gets in trouble and slower when shooting in places with little light. I took photos in this place with several cameras, and here you really notice the difference between, let's say, an expensive full-frame Sony A7CR or Nikon Z8 sensor. The autofocus works and still recognizes faces and eyes, but it just takes a little bit longer, so you might as well switch to manual focus. The quality of the photos is pretty good. Although this is not the first Fujifilm camera with film simulations, Fujifilm has gone all out on the X-S20 and even dedicated a special dial to it. This also immediately indicates which audience the X-S20 is aiming at. Photographers who like to work with filters and want a photo that is immediately usable without editing. All 19 filters can also be used in video mode, but not when you use log. It's a good way to become better as a photographer and see the world literally with a filter. If you are not a filter user, you can simply use the dial as a FN button and assign it to another function. And if you're afraid the film simulation will ruin your photo, then just take photos in JPEG and RAW, since the RAW photos never registers any effects and are great for editing. The X-S20 looks a lot like its predecessor, but has positive improvements. The grip has become a lot deeper, and as you can see, it is even a lot deeper than the one of the X-T5. At 491 grams, including card and battery, it is a pretty light camera. This contributes to my opinion that this is a good camera for traveling. The camera is made out of hard plastic and feels sturdy, but is sadly not weatherproof. So taking photos in the rainforest of Costa Rica without cover is not an option. The buttons on the back are quite small, and when I press them I don't get a good click feedback. This joystick works well, but it's a bit small as well, and it also feels a little bit cheap. When using the more expensive X-T5 for example, you really feel the high quality buttons and clicks, but hey, there's a price difference for a reason. The pop-up flash does not feel very strong, and the plastic around it in particular seems to break quite easily. At first I was wondering why Fujifilm put a flash on this camera, but I'm pretty sure the flash adds to the retro experience. The biggest advantage of buttons and dials on the X-S20 is that they are all customizable. It is also possible to set up to 4 C settings. You do this by setting the camera to C mode and adjusting settings, and these will be saved automatically. When you press the Q button, you will see all current settings that you can quickly adjust with the dial closest to your thumb. If you long press the Q button, you can customize the entire menu as well, and in that way you can put your favorite options next to your finger. The 3-inch LCD screen has 1.84 million dots and seems sharp and responsive. But unlike other brands, not every element of the screen is touchable. It depends on which mode you are in, whether you can operate the screen everywhere with touch. When you are in photo or video mode, you can only use the screen for touch focus or touch shot. In all honesty, it might be better the screen settings don't work with touch, because it will prevent a lot of fat finger stains. The screen does allow swipe movements, and this instantly provides you with 4 extra FN options, and that's just amazing. Just don't forget to activate the touch controls because they are turned off by default. The swipe movement are customizable and let you set anything from waveforms, autofocus settings, or even a level meter. What I found difficult with the LCD screen is the manual focus, and I thought the focus peaking did not always clearly indicate which part was in focus. You have different colors and strengths for color peaking though, so it might work perfect for you. The meter that indicates the distance you are focusing on when you use manual focus is very small. Luckily there's an option where you can magnify the screen a little bit so you can see everything everything that's in the screen a little bit bigger. The electronic viewfinder has a resolution of 2.36 million dots, which is in line with its predecessor, the X-S10, and competitor Sony a6700. A special sports refresh rate of 100 FPS is available, which is 20 FPS slower than the a6700. The X-S20 viewfinder is actually quite small and does not have a good sun hood. And in bright light conditions, your eye is not really shielded well, so you'd have to buy the additional eye cup to better block incoming light. Link in the description. Fujifilm has found space for 4 connections in the small body. On the left, we can find a 3.5mm microphone connection, USB-C port for charging and file transfer, and a micro HDMI connection. The headphone connection is located on the right side of the body. To keep the body small and compact, Fujifilm has chosen to install a single memory card slot which supports UHS-2 cards. This allows you to record the highest video quality all internally. When there will be a follow-up to the X-S20, I hope it will steal the idea of the Nikon ZF, which has an extra micro SD card slot, which you can use as a fully functioning second card slot. The NPW235 battery should last about 750 shots, and that's a strong improvement compared to its predecessor, which only lasts about 325 shots. In my experience with the camera, you can easily take it with you for a day, where you can switch between burst photography, filming at higher resolutions, changing the menu. I would recommend turning the camera off every time you don't use it. Nikon, Canon, Panasonic and Sony can learn from Fujifilm because they win in terms of user experience when it comes to menu. You receive clear feedback about where you are in the paginated menus, but also what the consequences are of certain settings. At this point, I think Fujifilm and Sony have the best user experience when it comes to menus on mirrorless cameras. You can really tell this is a hybrid camera by the fact you can record video from the photo mode by pressing the red record button. While some cameras have a limit on video quality and options in the photo mode, with the X-S20 you simply use the settings you have set in the video menu. You have separate menus for film and photo. If the camera is in photo mode, you can also adjust video settings, but this only affects the basics such as the resolution and frame rate. Put the camera in video mode and you get a dedicated movie menu where you can adjust the quality, bit rates, sound, autofocus and way more. Let's talk about the amazing filmmaking features on the Fujifilm X-S20, but not before I have asked you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. The advantages of filming on the X-S20 are that you can film up to 6.2K and DCI 4K 60 FPS oversampled. Interesting is the fact that with the X-S20, you always use oversampled footage in 4K, but the older X-T5 has an option to choose if you want to film oversampled or not. And I am not sure which one has my preference. The 6.2K film resolution is shot in a 3:2 ratio. This means you can create an old school look or zoom in on the footage to get a 16 or 17:9 ratio. You can also choose to film in UHD 4K 16:9 or DCI 17:9 format with a maximum of 16 frames per second. Please note that when filming in 4K 60 FPS, a crop is applied to the image and you will need a fast UHS-2 card to record the 422 10-bit 360 Mbps material. I use the SanDisk Extreme Pro 300 MB per second U3 Class 10 and it works great. Link in the description. It is possible to film in slow motion with 120 or 240 FPS in Full HD. You can export these images in clips from 24 to 60 FPS, so you don't have to slow them down in post-production. Of course, having to film in Full HD for slow motion is quite a quality drop from 6.2 or even 4K oversampled. So use it wisely. For the most cinematic looks, you can enable F-Lock, F-Lock 2 and Hybrid Lock Gamma to get a dynamic range of 14 stops. You mainly use F-Lock to extract more information from midtones and shadows, useful in low light or when filming indoors. While F-Lock 2 is useful for midtones and highlights, think of sunrises, bright light or colorful subjects. The HLG is intended for high dynamic range productions and its effect can only be seen on HDR screens. So if you have one, try it out, but if you don't have one, it's not very useful. It is quite special that this entry to advanced level camera supports f-Log2 and HLG. The video images come out of the camera very flat and without color, and it takes quite some time to color correct them, so know what you're getting into. If you prefer not to film in log, you could use the Eterna Cinema film simulation, which gives a flatter image with a cinematic feel. There is also a dynamic range enlarger. By default, the DR, dynamic range, is set to 100, but you can set it also to 200 or 400. Via the micro HDMI connection, it is possible to send 12-bit ProRes RAW up to 6.2K 30 FPS to an Atomos external monitor. When you use Blackmagic Design VideoSys 12G, Blackmagic RAW up to 30 FPS in 6.2K is also possible, and it's useful that you have separate menus for these separate recorders. The vlog mode mainly makes sure the menu is simplified and focuses faster on products. On the screen, you can select the vlog menu, where you can switch the self-timer, facial recognition and product priority mode on and off. The latter is of course important for content creators who review products, but using the X-S20 filming other reviews, I prefer to just use the facial recognition, because if the product priority mode is on, the focus keeps searching when there are no products in the frame, and that means I am not in focus. The three other functions in the vlog menu are turning stabilization on and off, high frame rate settings, and background defocus. Background defocus ensures that the aperture is always set to the lowest number, for example f2.8, to create a nice blurred background regardless the other settings. We have to talk about overheating, because that could be an issue. The X-S20 has two screw holes where you can attach the additional Fujifilm Fan 001 cooling fan, which will cost you about $200. This fan can be used for the X-H20, X-H2 and X-H2S. Link in the description. So Fujifilm already took precautions just in case. I did a little overheating test. I set both the Fujifilm X-S20 and X-T5 to 6.2K 422 10-bit and 24 FPS and let them run in a room temperature of 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
And the results.
Okay. Both cameras performed the same, no overheating at all. After 45 minutes, the 128 GB cards were full, so they stopped recording. So I did another test in a warmer room with a heater directly pointed at it. Sorry, it's -5 degrees Celsius right now, it's freezing, it's cold, so I can't test it outside.
And the results.
Again, after 40 minutes and 19 seconds, the X-S20 shut down because of overheating, and the X-T5 did the same only 8 seconds later. It was about 20 degrees Celsius in the room, but around the cameras it was more around 26. This means that the cameras can overheat and might overheat faster when filming in warm environments. But it is nothing compared to the overheating issues of the Canon EOS R5, so these cameras are good. So what do I think of the film on the Fujifilm X-S20? Well, sharp and usable, from many resolution and bitrate options to a tele light and other clear feedback when you start filming. So is the Fujifilm X-S20 the ideal content creator travel camera? Almost. If you watched to here, thank you. And you also know that both the photo and film quality are great. But the X-S20 lacks weather resistance, and that is an important feature to have. Still, it is very affordable with many X-F and X-C lenses at your disposal and a true competitor to the Sony a6700.